Ladies and gentlemen, there is a relief representation up here. Do you all see it? It's a peanut. Yeah, sorry, I have to say this. It is, thank you. It is a phallus, a phallic symbol of fertility in ancient times. But in this case on the wall, the phallus had another meaning. It was used as an amulet against the evil spirit, against the evil eye, in order to ward off, to keep away harm, illness, envy, and whatever else was regarded as evil in those days. The phallus has by nature the power to produce life, yes? And the power that comes from it, unique power that comes from it, in the mind of the people who carved the phallus on the wall, would protect them from the bad energy that comes from the evil eye. With the Greeks still believe in the evil eye very much, I assure you. And in those days, the inhabitants of the city used to touch the phallus on the wall for good luck. They also carried miniatures of phalluses with them for good luck. Am I having your permission to explain to you the accurate meaning of the English word phallus? English word phallus comes from the Greek word phallos. The Greek word phallos comes from the Greek verb phallo, which means to bloom, to flourish. The accurate interpretation of the English word phallus is an active, blooming penis. That's the right translation. Yes, now you are laughing, but in those days they didn't laugh. Okay? So, yes, because Delos is full of them, you'll see them everywhere. Now you know the exact meaning. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this area here was one of the several market places of the city. So this was a marketplace, yes? An agora, as we call it. On the right side of the agora of the market, there were shops and workshops. And on the other side of it, there were small temples and altars. Some of them were dedicated to Hermes. Who was Hermes? The Greek god of commerce. Marketplace commerce. In this area, grain and slaves were mainly sold. The market was found right behind the installations of the main port of the city, which occupied the west coast. The installations of the main port had a length of approximately 1.5 kilometers, of approximately 1 mile. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the main street in the city, the so-called sacred way that led from the main port into the sanctuary of the Greek god Apollo. Yes? On either side of the street, there were long porticos, long stoas, as you can see in this picture, okay? Behind the columns of the facade of the stores, there were shops which sold souvenirs to the pilgrims. And outside the stores, outside the columns, stood dozens of marble and bronze statues, of which today only the bases have been preserved. You can see what remains of the 14 shops built one next to the other, which sold souvenirs to the pilgrims. And this was a long statue base that also had a bench so that pilgrims could sit and get some rest. Yes? Do you see the 3 long gray steps on the other side right in front of us? Okay, these belong to the main entrance into the sanctuary of Apollo, which was a large gate with the Doric columns at its facade. Okay. Do you see the building up there on the right side on the hill that stands alone with the pediment and the two columns at the facade? Do you all see it up there? Yes. This was the temple of the Egyptian goddess Isis. Up there on the hill were found the temples of the Egyptian and Syrian gods whose worship was introduced into Greece, bless you, after the expedition of Alexander the Great and the conquest of Egypt and Asia by him. The ancient Greeks were generally tolerant towards other religions and always willing to accept that the neighbor's god was also a god, perhaps one of their own gods under a different name. On Delos, for example, the Greek god Apollo had to share his birthplace with Egyptian gods, with Syrian gods, with the god of Israel, and all the other gods worshipped by the inhabitants of the city. On Delos, ladies and gentlemen, the archaeologists have found the ruins of the earliest synagogue of the Jewish diaspora in the world that dates back to the 1st century BC. The synagogue is found far away from here on the other side. On the other side of the island, you can see one of the largest statue bases in the city of Delos. It weighed originally 32 tons. I will show you in a few minutes which statue stood upon it, okay? And as you can see, it is full with inscriptions carved by travelers over the years, yes? But we have here another inscription in Greek letters, one of the oldest Greek inscriptions, yes, from the 6th century BC, which says that both the statue and the base were made from the same piece of marble. Marble from the nearby island of Naxos, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are within the enclosure of the sanctuary of the Greek god Apollo, which was the area all around us. Within the enclosure of the sanctuary of Apollo, there were 3 temples of the god. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. This one is this one, which means the largest temple of the god, whose foundations can be seen behind me on the right side. Do you see them? The largest temple of Apollo was built in the early 5th century BC by the inhabitants of the city. It was a marble temple in a Doric style. It had columns on all 4 sides, and inside it, in the main room, stood the bronze and gold-plated cult statue of the god, which represented Apollo as a kouros, as a handsome, naked young man. The second largest temple of the god, the one in the middle, was built in the late 5th century BC by the Athenians. The Athenians who sent to Delos large quantities of a very expensive marble from Athens, from Attica, the same marble with which the Parthenon on the Acropolis in Athens had been built some years before. Any lady in our group whose name is Cynthia? No one? Forget. Now, next to the 3 columns, on the right side, you can see 2 large round pieces of white marble. Do you all see them? 2 large pieces of white marble. These belong to a huge statue of Apollo, to the so-called the Colossus of the Naxians. A statue of Apollo about 9 meters tall, about 30 feet tall, dedicated to the god in the 6th century BC by the inhabitants of the nearby island of Naxos. The yellow houses that you see on the left side and the other ones on the right side are some of the homes of the people who are working on the island. A permanent population today on Delos is not allowed. Only those who are working here are allowed to stay on the island overnight. Nobody else. Allow me to show you the last picture that depicts the city of Delos as it was in those days. There was the city of Delos. Do you see how densely populated the city was? Okay. Yes. I would like to explain to you what destroyed the city of Delos. I said before that only the 1/7 of it has been excavated. The rest still lies under the earth in order to protect the monument from the weather conditions and the floods. Yes? Ladies and gentlemen, the exceptional growth of the city of Delos had unfortunately a tragic sudden end. The money that had been accumulated in the city and the friendly relations of its inhabitants with the Romans, because many Italians lived here in those days, were the main reasons of its destruction. Delos was plundered and destroyed twice. For the first time in the year 88 BC by Mithridates, the king of Pontus, who was in long war with the Romans. And for the second time, the city was destroyed in the year 69 BC by the pirates of Athinodoros, an ally of Mithridates. During these two attacks, thousands of people were killed. Those who were captured prisoners were sold as slaves. You know something? The inhabitants of Delos believed that they were safe on the holy island of Apollo, that they were under the protection of the gods. That's why the city was not fortified, there were no defensive walls, and it was an easy prey for the enemy. The lions were a very expensive offering made in the 6th century BC by the inhabitants of the nearby island of Naxos. You'll see the replicas of the original statues because the original lions are kept in the Museum of Delos, which is another lion was stolen in the 18th century and it was taken to Venice, to Italy, where today the stolen lion stands in Venice in front of the building of the Arsenal, okay, downtown with a new head, ugly head. Opposite the lions was found the area of the sacred lake, birthplace of Apollo and Artemis according to Greek mythology. You can recognize the area of the sacred lake by the trees that cover its area nowadays. Do you see the trees over there? Okay, the lake is dry today. It was drained in the year 1925 due to a malaria epidemic that affected those who worked on the island. Further east was found the athletic and educational center of the city with the hippodrome, hippodromos, the track for horse and chariot races, the stadium, the gymnasium and other buildings.